Alright, let's get started. Hello, my name is Julie. I'm one of the Child American English speech synthesis voices from the Whoops. Hi, I'm Julia. I'm an autistic adult and part-time AAC user, and today I'm going to show you how I use Proloquo. First I'll tell you a bit about myself, my AAC journey, and what we're doing here, and then I'll open Q&A. So a little about me. My name is Julia Tuttle, and I'm autistic, ADHD, dyspraxic, and a part-time AAC user. By day I'm a computer programmer working at Google on Android, but I'm not speaking for Google today. And despite my boundless enthusiasm for Proloquo, I don't actually work for Assistiveware, and I'm not speaking for them today either. I also want to highlight that I'm one part-time AAC user, and I'm not speaking for full-time or other part-time AAC users today. I'm speaking for myself, as someone who has an autistic special interest in AAC and enjoys assistive technology as show and tell. I grew up speaking, and my speech worked well enough that I didn't look for alternatives. I learned about AAC by a happy coincidence last year, and something told me I needed to explore it for myself. I found that AAC was helpful for me when I was feeling overwhelmed, having trouble advocating for myself, or simply trying to shift myself into a lower energy state. I tried a few different symbol-based apps, and fell in love with Proloquo for its modern and expansive vocabulary. I've been using Proloquo for more than a year now, and I still love it. I still speak plenty, but I also use Proloquo for text, and signs or gestures when they're easier. I can survive with speech alone, but AAC helps me thrive in more environments and situations. So that brings us to today. You'll be asking me questions using Zoom's Q&A feature, and I'll be showing my iPad screen live as I answer using Proloquo. We can talk about Proloquo, or AAC in general, or whatever is on your mind. Please don't worry about asking silly or nosy questions. I'm happy to go over basics or decline a question that's too personal. Please don't worry about asking dumb or nosy questions. I'm happy to go over basics or decline a question that's too personal. Lastly, I'd like to introduce a human and a robot who will be helping me out. One is Endeavor Corbin, an autistic Proloquo 2 Go user and my AAC mentor, who will be helping to moderate and organize questions. The other is eSpeak, a text-to-speech robot, who will be reading your questions so I can focus on answering them.
Hello, I'm the robot.
Alright, I think that covers everything, so I'll open the floor for questions.
Have you utilized the split screen much?
So honestly I don't actually like how Proloquo itself looks in split screen, so I only use that when I need to, like when I was copying scripts from Google Docs into Proloquo.
Can you show how you utilize it with fringe vocabulary?
So you should get a decent idea of how that works as I go. But broadly the fringe vocab is kept in the yellow tab, and it's an extra tap or two but still quite easy to access.
How do you find using a single button for I, me and my?
That was something of an adjustment for me. I started out with apps like CoughDrop, where the buttons on the home page were chosen in large part for efficiency. Proloquo doesn't ignore that, but does prioritize organizing inflections under their base word. It's not a huge change, but it does slow me down just slightly.
Where do you most often use AAC? Home or work?
That's a good question. I don't actually use Proloquo itself at work, since my company has a very text chat-friendly culture. I do sometimes have to ask to move a conversation from out loud or video chat to text, but that's no big deal. I mostly use it at home with people I know and trust, since I'm more likely to mask around strangers and find myself speaking even if I don't want to.
What was the most challenging aspect of AAC to adapt to, and what steps did you take to address it?
So that's a great question. The hardest aspect for me was actually maintaining the emotional component of my communication. I'm a very expressive speaker, but when I first switched to AAC, I was putting 100% of my thoughts through a pretty dull text-to-speech voice. No offense, Lizzie. I had to learn how to let myself show the same emotion that I conveyed in my voice using the rest of my body.
Do you think Proloquo is more intuitive than Proloquo 2 Go, or is it about the same?
I think the organization of Proloquo is better and the vocabulary is newer, but I think the basic functionality isn't super different. I think if I had to start using 2Go tomorrow, I'd be frustrated at the vocabulary, but I wouldn't be learning an entirely new. I wouldn't be learning an entirely new kind of app. Oops.
Do you think Product Wo would be reasonably usable on an Android phone if I just want a few dozen words for dysregulated states? Would it be easy to set up for that use case?
It wouldn't be a great choice, mostly because it's iOS only, but that's the kind of thing you could set up yourself with one of the free apps that works fine, but has a limited included vocabulary.
How long did it take you to feel like you were fluent using this program?
I wanna say it took about 6 months before it felt pretty fluent to me, but it's also been a learning curve for my communication partners, and it's gotten easier as they've gotten better at reading my nonverbal and non-AAC cues.
How would you suggest a new adult user with no experience begin?
So the most approachable way to start, as a literate adult, tends to be a text-based app, where you type your messages using a regular keyboard. They're less to learn and also they're less complex to build, so they tend to be cheaper. That said, many AAC users find over time that a symbol-based app works better for them, so I wouldn't rule those out entirely.
How long do you spend looking for a button before using the search feature/keyboard?
That depends on the situation. If I'm in a rush or want to communicate as much as I can in the time I have, I'm pretty quick to switch to the keyboard. If I'm home and with someone I trust and they're feeling patient, I'm more likely to try to find a word myself or to use the search box.
Do the symbols on the buttons help you compose a sentence, or do you rely more on the words and muscle memory?
So I almost always rely more on the words and muscle memory than on the symbols. But if I'm sufficiently overwhelmed, I'll start scanning for symbols instead.
How much have you customized Product Wo?
so I haven't done a ton of work organizing Proloquo, in large part because the included vocab can't be rearranged. What I have done is add many words that I use within the existing structure. I haven't actually filled out all the fringe I use, like, say, the word fringe, because when I'm talking about that in detail, I'm usually well regulated enough that typing some of the words isn't a problem.
What are the limitations of personalization, if any, in Proloquo?
So that's one of the unique and perhaps controversial aspects of Proloquo. The base vocabulary is very robust, but it's also fixed, so you can't remove or reorganize existing buttons. This is frustrating to some folks, but is designed to keep things simple for new AAC users and their supporters, and also to ensure that communicators always have access to robust vocabulary and a full keyboard.
What are some AAC groups on Zoom?
I wish I knew of more. The one I know about is Assistive, where's adult AAC user Zooms, which are every other Friday, and you can find the details in their Facebook group.
Popsicle, popsicle, popsicle.
Stable table, etc. If you're confused, this is a continuation of some delightful echolalia from the Assistiveware call earlier today. Also, I'd like to point folks to the Zoom chat, where Ian has suggested another AAC social space y'all might be interested in. Echo, echo, echo. Let's see what we've got in Q&A. Endeavor, would you mind fishing that out of chat? My Zoom is being uncooperative.
The table C should pop quickly.
Cookie cookie. So it looks like we're running low on questions. Please put any more you've got in the Q&A box while I info dump at you about a couple of parts of Proloquo that I think are really cool. One of those is the related words list. It's to the right of the main grid, and it shows synonyms or other words related to the button you just pressed. For example, if you push good, you see amazing, awesome, excellent, great, and so on. This lets Proloquo pack a much more robust vocabulary into the app while sticking to a grid size that is manageable for more users. The other is the grammar column, one to the right. It lets you pick forms of the word you just tapped without needing to open a menu or hold the button down or anything. Okay, cool, we've got some more questions. Keep them coming.
Thoughts on the age level, if applicable, that Proloquo is designed for?
So right now, Proloquo is primarily designed for new AAC users who aren't yet literate, or who are relatively young. It's also a very young app itself, and I'm honestly not sure if it's even hit its second birthday yet. That said, I am by no means the only adult using it, and I actually ran across an interview with the CEO, David, where he stated that 80% of Proloquo users are children. Only 80. That means there's a hefty 20% out there in my or a similar situation.
Thoughts on how Proloquo handles sections of vocabulary that other apps sometimes hide by default? I'm thinking of the health, bodies, identity, and society sections.
I think Proloquo does a great job with those. They're not entirely robust, and I've had to add my preferred terms for some things, but they're worlds better than most apps. There's also one very angry review from someone who literally does not want her child to be able to speak about non-binary folks, which I think shows both how good a job AssistivWare did with the vocabulary and how important it is that supporters can't remove words they deem inappropriate.
How would you rate the difficulty of editing a message you've entered into the message window?
It's not bad, but could be better. You can use the keyboard buttons, like this, to scroll back through your message and type new words, but you can't use the symbol buttons to insert new words anywhere but the end of the message.
Do you ever feel like you have to edit the message that's in your head to get your turn in the conversation, or just because it feels like too much work to select all the words you think? Or do you feel like the words in your messages are the same, regardless of the modality you use?
Oh, that's a great question. I do find myself simplifying my sentences sometimes to be able to write faster, and I try to let myself do that or even encourage it when I'm using AAC as a regulation tool, but when I'm calm and not in a rush, I do try to write out the exact words in my head, if only for the practice.
I'm thinking of changing from Proloquo to Go to Proloquo. Do you think it is worth changing and setting up again?
I think it's absolutely worth signing up for the free trial and seeing how your brain likes it. It can be tricky to give a new app a proper trial without starting from scratch, but hopefully it would give you at least a little bit of a sense of if it's for you.
Any suggestions on the best system for utilizing the team members feature?
So I think the best person to answer that is actually Pam from AssistivWare, who recently moved into a kind of parent coaching role, if I understood correctly. But I think the way I would use it to give basically everyone you can access to view and model, but keep edit access to those who have a good understanding of how you're using and teaching and organizing AAC. Looks like we're out of questions. Anything else anyone wants to see or know? Doesn't have to be serious or on topic.
Have you learned any new words from Product Wow's vocabulary, including related words lists?
Oh, this is an absolutely excellent question, and I wonder if you already knew the answer, but yes, I have. I actually learned about trying to actually find it now. Okay, I absolutely swear there was a body-related word that I actually learned from Proloquo, but I don't want to make you all wait for me to find it again.
You mentioned emotion. How have you made it more snarky?
So a lot of that has been learning to time my facial expressions with my messages instead of just staring off into space as they play. And some of it has been being willing to write out the snarky messages and trust that a good communication partner will be willing to wait for it and still appreciate it.
How easy is it to edit Product Wow?
Actually really easy, mostly because there's not a lot to change. Like let's say I finally get around to adding Corin Fringe. so it's pretty simple compared to a lot of apps. Honestly, the hardest part ends up being learned how the included vocabulary is organized so you know where to put things, but that tends to come naturally as you learn the system.
Is using Proloquo easier and more efficient than text-to-speech?
So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by text-to-speech, but I'm guessing you mean an app like Proloquo for text, where you have a regular keyboard instead of a grid of buttons with symbols and words. In that case, I can say that Proloquo in particular is not faster than typing for me, because I actually tested them to get a sense of how fast they all were. Writing the same phrase, I can write in Proloquo at about 25 words per minute, type on my iPad keyboard at about 60, type on a regular computer keyboard at about 120, and speak orally at about 240. So, faster, definitely not, but easier, sometimes, depending on how overwhelmed I am. I remember one time when I was quite sick with a stomach bug, and trying to type with a regular keyboard was actually distressingly difficult. That was the clearest example of when Proloquo is actually much easier.
Do you use any other AAC apps? If yes, which ones, and how do you choose which one to use in a situation?
So I'm going to broaden this to other forms of AAC, apps or not. App-wise, I use Proloquo for text sometimes when I'm having particularly time-sensitive conversations or using a lot of technical vocab that I don't have in Proloquo. I also very occasionally use Speech Assistant on my Android phone on the rare and extremely disappointing occasions when my AAC device is not literally attached to my body. Besides apps, I also use some gestures and body language, a bit of American Sign Language, and some rudimentary sorts of partner-assisted scanning, like my partner listing items and me showing a number of fingers to pick one. And of course there's just my extremely clear enthusiasm, which often needs no explicit communication at all.
How well does product WoW work for someone who wants buttons with phrases or sentences rather than individual words? Where do you add phrases?
So it would work okay for those folks, but it's definitely designed around literacy and assembling sentences yourself. That said, I absolutely have some phrases of my own in it, and those generally go in the purple tab, which has chat, words and phrases. So here you can see the phrases I scripted for this event. Any more questions? Etc.
How often do you use product WoW to write things to share online? For example, messaging, social media posts, etc.
So for me Proloquo is in large part a regulation tool, which means I tend to use it more when I'm overwhelmed or want to stay not overwhelmed. That means I use it a lot for regular conversation with people I trust, and less or never with folks whose response to AAC I don't know. Getting back to your question, that also means I tend to use it occasionally for chatting on Discord, but rarely for things like Facebook, where responding is less urgent and can wait until I'm better regulated.
What is the learning curve in translating thoughts and inner concepts that may or may not follow sentence and word logic into AAC button words?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have a lot of experience with that since the inside of my brain is actually a quite verbal place. But if you get my inner child to show up, she's more in feelings and vibes truly. And so the learning curve there has been a process of unmasking, of learning to let myself be silly and open and genuine, and letting the part of me who is very very proud of my language skills take a break and let the younger me talk how she does.
What should be on our next t-shirt?
Well, that's a hard question. I'm, as you might have guessed, a fan of snarky autism and disability-related messages. And I actually used to rock a sticker on my iPad case that said mouth words are not a superior form of communication, which actually used to be Endeavor's display name on the site formerly known as Twitter. So if C is cool with it, I think that would be a great shirt.
What's your favorite preparation of potato?
So a nice crispy hash brown is good, but I'm also fond of mashed potatoes with shredded cheese and copious amounts of garlic powder, which got me through the recovery from some oral surgery a few years ago.
What is your favorite echolalius, Tim?
I'm not sure I have a specific one. I tend to just repeat what's going on in conversation, or repeat a word exactly twice to indicate that I am pleased with or happy about it. I do have one that I picked up from a friend, which is just the word shrimp. Any more questions? Last call. You've got the traditional 45 seconds to formulate your response.
What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Ooh, something with chocolate in or coffee, and maybe peanut butter. But I'm also up for trying weird things like everything bagel ice cream, which the ice cream person all but refused to sell me unless I tried it first to make sure I'd like it. It was of course delicious, and mostly a garlic flavor. Which brings me to one of my biggest gripes with Pro Loco, which is that it considers the essential food group of garlic to be a freaking condiment.
Do you find light/dark mode easier for scanning?
I find dark mode much easier. Light mode is prettier to me and is nice if I have a migraine and want less contrast, but otherwise I don't use it much. Also, just as garlic is not a condiment, neither is pesto, and this is a hill I have successfully avoided dying on before but by a narrow margin.
Did you know that you, Julia, and Endeavor asterisk are awesome?
I can't be sure I am, but Endeavor is a fantastic person who has helped me a bunch personally and also contributed to several papers on AAC for non-speaking and semi-speaking autistics. Looks like we're out of questions. And I should probably wrap things up, so it's script o'clock. Alright, I'm gonna wrap things up here. Thanks so much for joining and chatting with me. I'll be making a recording available on YouTube, and I'll share that link in the Facebook event. And thanks again to Endeavor for helping me out tonight. Have a wonderful evening, or whatever time it is for you.